I'm from Gosport, which is by Portsmouth. So I'm a southerner, really. And I just came to Coventry for university and then ended up staying for my job. And then here I am, I'm still here. So I work at college, which is a college for adults with physical, sensory, emotional, behavioural difficulties and disabilities. So yeah, it's a multitude of working with different people with different sort of additional needs and support needs and things within their sort of education, really. And I teach performing arts and dance. I've got a performance company called Moving Space, and I run kids creative yoga classes as well as teaching my full-time main job. I do that at the weekends, and I work with young people in the evenings, teaching dance classes for young people with disabilities and learning difficulties. My first child, Logan, he was 5 weeks early because I'd had complications with him, and I'd had to be induced 5 weeks early, and he was very small, and it's really struggled to start with to feed, and in the end we ended up going home and it was fine, and he started feeding and everything. About 2 weeks later, he was 6'6" when he was born, and he'd gone down to 4'4". So the midwife said, "Oh, you need to take him into hospital, make sure he's okay," and blah blah blah. So we went to A&E and did all of that, and the doctors in the hospital basically said, "You can't breastfeed. You need to be bottle feeding." And so that's what they did when we were there. They made up a bottle and fed him there, and which he really struggled with because, of course, it's going, from the nipple to the bottle, and it wasn't really working. And so that was really traumatic and stressful. And, obviously not having done it before, you don't know, do you? So it was really upsetting as well, feeling a bit of a failure, and oh my God, mum did this, and it's supposed to be easy and supposed to just be able to do it, and it was very upsetting, really. When I got home, I ended up the midwife called and said, "How did you get on? I see you've been to the hospital and everything. What's happened?" And blah blah. And she said, No. Why have they told you to stop breastfeeding? Don't stop breastfeeding. If you want to stop breastfeeding, then stop. But if you don't want to stop, then carry on. There's no reason at all why you should stop. You were doing it fine. There was no problems at all. If there's an issue, it's to do with, something to do with Logan, and maybe they're not looking at the picture properly, and blah, blah, blah. And she said, no, if you want to do it, then you carry on. And so I went, oh, okay. Because I didn't, when you think, I didn't know that, is that an option or is it not an option? Because the doctors have said, no, don't do it. So basically I just said, okay, well, Logan's not taking the bottle anyway. He's really not into it. So I just carried on. And from there on in, it sort of got better. And he started to put on weight and everything kind of seemed to work. I think it just was, the first couple of weeks, and sometimes their bodies don't do what, because he was early as well, and they don't, he was playing like a catch-up game, really. I think the trouble is, as well, as you see, like my mum was such a natural whiz at it, and you think, oh, I just want to be like mum was, and she was amazing, and you then comparing yourself to that, and of course it's different times and different things and different advice and everything, and everything's changed since you were a child anyway. So yeah, it's all very difficult, and the pressure that's on to be this amazing mother and whatever, and uber getting everything right and whatever. Yeah, it makes it very stressful. My mum always used to go, well, I don't know why you do it any other way. It's so much cheaper and it's there and you haven't got to mess around with anything. And, that the old what's it attitude of, just get on with it and do it and whatever. I had this really amazing lady who I I don't think she was English, born in England. I think she'd come from China, and she was had this really different way of being a midwife. You could see she was really different and had a really different manner about her. And she was really, look, do it like this, and have you tried this, and all of this. And some of the other ladies, that midwives and nurses that had been in to kind of help, weren't that helpful at all. And she came back after, because she was the one who helped me give birth to Logan, and she'd come back up to the ward to make sure that everything was okay and that everything was happening all right. And so that was after her shift had finished, and she'd come up to the ward and everything to make sure everything was okay. I wasn't confident in, because Coventry's quite good actually, in that it has, or did have, quite a lot of breastfeeding cafes that you would go to. And I do remember me and my mum going to one of those, but me being absolutely petrified, and I wasn't, used to feeding in public, and it was, I didn't have the confidence to do that. And of course it wasn't quite going as well as I'd hoped. So I really wasn't confident about it, doing it in front of other women who were doing it. And then also having a strange woman come to you and go, oh, do you want me to help you? Are you okay? Do you want some advice? Do you want this and that? Oh, well, I don't really know you, and I don't really, so I was a bit, that was too much. It was too much for me. And I never went back to one again, because I just was so traumatized by it. But I think for some women that's amazing, and I think that's a really supportive thing to go to. And I think, were we able to go now, I think I would go now, because I'm more confident in myself as a person and in myself as a mother. I found out 2 weeks before the first lockdown that I was pregnant. And I obviously normally wouldn't have told anybody apart from my boss, because the job that I have obviously is very hands-on. As soon as old Boris had made the kind of announcement about it all, and he'd said, I think it was a Monday night, and he'd said about pregnant women shouldn't be going to work and they should be working from home, and blah blah blah, like that. And I was like, oh well, that kind of doesn't really mean me, because I'm teach and I have to go to college and everything. And on the way to work the next morning, I had 3 phone calls from my boss, and obviously I was driving, so I didn't answer them, from my boss saying, well, hi, you need to get in touch with me, I need to have a conversation with you before you come in, and blah 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 blah. So that was very bizarre. Like, okay, I'm not poorly, and I'm really feel fine, and I haven't got any morning sickness or anything like that. So it was very weird. And then obviously the next week everybody was in lockdown. We kind of all got through that. But actually, for me, I think it may have helped with my pregnancy, because of the miscarriages and things I'd had before. I think being at home, I think it helped me. So COVID for me was kind of a bit of a blessing, really, because it took that pressure away of, because my life generally is so hectic and running around from here, there and everywhere. Having been made to stop and not do half of that stuff, and to teaching online and just doing that, getting up in the morning and just doing that, I think it really helped me physically. But the going to hospital, and the fear of going to hospital and going, having to go alone at quite a stressful time as well. And because all the scans and things, I think every time I went for a scan, I was like, I just think that the baby's not going to be there, and it's all going to go wrong again. And having to go on my own and to deal with that on my own, and just be holding my breath every time you sort of get there and go, okay, it's just what's going to happen. That was very hard.